Greetings and salutations, this is Huge Ass! And it's time to look at the 6 in Taboo Conspiracies Flat Earth truths, which are in fact Flat Earth lies. If you haven't seen the others, they're in a playlist on my channel. There's a card in the corner right now. And also links in the description of this video. But before we get on to that, I have a message for David Weiss, otherwise known as Dearth. Pay Wally! He met your challenge. You owe him 3 Bitcoin. Pay up, you bludger. This outing from Taboo is called the Space Vacuum. And it marks him being rather lazy by just taking stuff from Nathan Oakley's channel. Yes, we have to listen to Nathan Oakley.
Take a gas, vacuum of equal volume, and we're going to remove the barrier. You know what's going to happen spontaneously, right? The gas is going to fill the available volume.
Is the expansion of a gas into a vacuum. I have in one of these bulbs some bromine, and in the other I have a vacuum. And if I open the tap between these two, you will see spontaneously the bromine rush from one to the other. Now that is the simplest change we can have, perhaps, because all that happens is a change in entropy. In this case, the expansion into a vacuum, nothing else is involved. There's no energy change, there's no temperature change, there's no change except entropy.
So there's nothing in this old footage that I or anyone else would disagree with. If you release gas into a vacuum, it will expand to fit the available space. Of course, this is repeating the mistake that all flirts seem to do. More than one set of forces can act on an object at the same time. And that'll come back to bite Nathan later. But for now, let's hear from the Uber troll himself.
When you suggest that you have space, therefore second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply, it's a begging the question fallacy.
Actually, Nathan, that's a straw man fallacy. No one says that if you have space, then the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply. As usual, you're confusing concepts in a way that your followers won't understand. And so they'll just go with whatever you tell them to think. For those who aren't quite sure, a straw man fallacy is when you make an argument for your opponent that the opponent does not make. And then you try and attack that argument instead of the real argument. It's the sort of thing you do when you know that your argument's wrong and your opponent's right. But you still want to look like you've won. Especially when you're talking to people as dim as those who watch Nathan Oakley's channel. Space isn't a begging the question fallacy. We've measured that it exists. We've sent probes there. And some of us have even been there. As for the second law of thermodynamics, that'll come up again soon.
How can you have gas pressure without a container? Because the natural instinct of a fundamentalist globe-believing fundy, it's a bit redundant, is to beg the question of the sky vacuum and then tell us that obviously the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply because the gas isn't filling my presupposition that the sky is a vacuum. Well, that's a begging the question fallacy, to assume that you've got a sky vacuum and therefore not require a justification for its violation of that particular law. That would be an entropy increase, or standard gas law. The volume that you would calculate it with would be the volume of space the gas has to fill. And if the sky was a vacuum, that would be an availability of volume for the gas we breathe to fill. And fill it must. That's what gas does. It expands in all directions.
And I totally agree. The gas must expand in all directions. Except Nathan is forgetting that other forces can act on the gas. And I wonder if Nathan knows what that force might be. Desert File?
Gravity, you retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of gravity? Gravity! Gravity!
So the gas we're breathing, which is at pressure, would fill the sky vacuum.
Gravity!
Now their response is often to say, well, we have a gas pressure gradient, which is merely a delta of the original question and assertion when you've got a sky vacuum belief. How can you have gas pressure in the first instance without a container? And they would say, well, a delta of gas pressure gradient is something we experience. It's like, well, how did you achieve the gas pressure in the first place without containment? And the answer is you can't. It stands directly in violation of several natural laws. Without the container, there can be no pressure.
And again, I agree. You need containment. On the Earth, with its atmosphere, in fact on any planet with an atmosphere, we have a force containing the gas. And that force is called...
Gravity!
I mean, does this really need to be said?
Therefore, if the sky was a vacuum, as asserted in the heliocentric rhetoric, then the gas we breathe would fill the space.
Unless, of course, there are other forces acting on it. And no, I'm not going to play it again.
Outer space, claimed to be a vacuum, is fake. Therefore, any claims from that claim to be sky vacuum are automatically fake.
And that's perfect logic, assuming that your initial premise is correct. And of course, that's where it all falls down. You can't ignore gravity, it exists. It's been experimentally verified. It's been empirically measured. Your premise only holds true if gravity doesn't exist and nothing else is holding the gas to the planet. The fact that there's a pressure gradient proves that there is, and hence your assertion is fake.
Including, but not limited to, pictures of Earth from space. The region is fake, second law of thermodynamics violation. Therefore, the pictures claimed to have come from the fake region are also fake. Orbits in a sky vacuum, which is also a begging the question fallacy, which I won't detail now, is claimed to take place in a fake place called space, therefore automatically fake. Same goes for satellites, all debunked by the second law of thermodynamics and several other laws of nature, descriptions of how things occur always. Standard gas law, Boyle's law, Avogadro's law, these are all violated by the assertion that we have a sky vacuum. We don't. And any stage performance that comes from that region is also fake, including the ISS, taking place on a stage on Earth, on Highwire, not in a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum.
Yeah, quite frankly, I just let him waffle on there. He's just trying to brainwash his idiotic followers. I know my listeners are better than that. And he made a lot of assertions for which he provided zero evidence. And you know why? Because there is no evidence that he's correct. I mean, the first object was launched into space in 1959. Space programs around the world have involved millions of people. Literally. And not one of them has come forward in the 60 years since and said it was all fake. Is there really enough money in the world to make sure a conspiracy like that stays silent for so long? Especially one with such far-reaching consequences if it happens to be real, which it isn't. To Nathan Oakley and Flurs in general, provide some evidence that it's fake, or shut up. As Hitchens' razor says, assertions made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
You can't have orbital mechanics without an assumption of the R value, and we've debunked it with the Black Swan.
No, you haven't. You just think you have. The Black Swan is probably the most debunked bit of flat Earth evidence that's ever been presented. There are literally hundreds of videos debunking it. It's just nonsense.
But orbits is always going to be a begging the question fallacy to begin with. Nice that we can debunk it with one breath. We debunked R. Bye-bye orbital mechanics. Bye-bye globe Earth.
You only think that because you've based it on a false premise in the first place, as I've already shown. Be careful, Nathan and Taboo. You might have your R's handed to you. What a wally.
Oh, hi Hugh, you called?
Sorry about that, young man. I was talking about Nathan.
No, you didn't? Okay, bye.
The corgi's warming up, so if you like this video, click the like button. It really helps me out, as does leaving a comment. And if you'd like to see more of what I do, click the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you get notified of future videos that I put out. And if you really like what I do, you can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. For $3.99 Australian a month, that means you're a part of the huge ass movement. So there's nothing left to do but cue the corgi.
You're despicable.